Yeah, so I'd say I have like two branches of work. So one is I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups and also philanthropic organizations to assess whether or not what they do actually works, right? So when people make programming pivots to be like, okay, did this do what we thought it would do or did it not do what we thought it would do? That's what I went to school for, was a research. But then on the self-worth side, I think something that I really learned going through school and then also being an entrepreneur was that you really have to be on top of your personal development and tuned into your growth in order to sustain. And so I found that too, like even when I'm working with entrepreneurs on research, it just like naturally like overlays into, okay, like what are small shifts you can make in your day or your week so that you're actually able to do this incredible work that you're doing. And so in July, I launched a podcast called Graceful Rule Breakers, which is premised around the idea that there are a lot of people who want to change the world, but we're stuck in like traditional systems. Academia is such a perfect example of it because it's so traditional. Like it is really limiting and restrictive and across the board at any school you're at, because there's a certain things you have to do. And so I started the podcast because I don't believe in a lot of rules and regulations, and I'm always trying to kind of push the boundaries where I can in these different spaces, and found that the best way again to like sustain in doing that work is to be really clear on your values and to know what's important to you and to be able to articulate that. And then again, to be able to carve out space. Everything I preach is around bite size. To me, I'm like, if it takes more than 15 minutes, I don't want to ask someone to do it, because I think then it starts to feel overwhelming, where if you say like, hey, could you take like 3 minutes in the morning to write down 10 things you really like about yourself? That doesn't feel inaccessible. And so through the podcast and through coaching, I've been working on just developing more customized small behavioral shifts that people can do, but keeping it within the context of when you value yourself and when you work on yourself, that's when you're better able to help other people. Whereas I think the default is let's run myself into the ground, helping everyone else. It's okay, but then you're just burnt out and you can't keep changing the world. So instead, let's focus on yourself first. And I'm tradition because I love school. After I finished my PhD, I started working on, I'm certified in like children's yoga, teens yoga, trauma yoga, adult yoga. So I've been gradually like diving more into those types of practices and just getting educated in that space so that I can incorporate more of that into my business, which has been fun. As I mentioned, I love learning. So I'm like, sure, I'd love to work on another certificate and learn more stuff.
I think what you said is really interesting because, again, traditional education, they do, like, you have to do everything in a certain way, in a certain order, and there's not much skipping around. But yet they preach that we want you to be critical thinkers. We want you to think outside of the box. But if you stray too far outside of the box, they say, no, come back in. You're going too far off the beaten path. It's dangerous. So it's kind of this catch-22 where we want to push the limitations, but whenever we get to that edge, some sort of system is pulling us back in before we really truly discover either greatness or tragedy. We never really get to cross that line.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what I like about the premise behind graceful rule breaking is like you push till you're up against that line and then you kind of pull back a little bit and then like you push up against it again. And I think especially in school, for me to be able to get to do what I wanted to do in school, it's this constant art of negotiation with people who have more power than you. And I think to your point earlier, the more you have an awareness of your self-worth, the better you are able to advocate for the things you want. Because you see some people who have a totally atypical experience at school and get to do exactly what they want and like pursue. I got to go to India twice at Penn. Like I got to do like wild things, but it's because I was really good at being like, here's how I'm valuable and this is what I want to do. How do I get there? And I think that that's something I want like everyone to be able to do that, right? Like you should be able to explore and do the things that make you happy without getting bullied or reprimanded constantly.
And that makes all the difference, right? The world truly is your oyster, not to be cliched, but it really is. But you have to know where to look.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the Ivy League entitlement a lot too. It's like, people ask for it though. You know what I mean? I'm like, they're entitled, like they might be entitled, but like they get what they want because they're not afraid to ask for it. I'm like, we could all probably benefit from being a little more like that. Just being like, this is the thing I want, more likely to get it than if you don't tell anyone.